Hey, what's up? It's Kit. Time for another video. Today we have a very interesting topic, and actually a lot of people I think are waiting for this. We're gonna talk about what reels to use when fishing shallow water, targeting big fish on slow jigging. And there's a bit of versatility when it comes to these reels. We'll talk about that later. But for you guys that have just joined us, thank you very much for clicking on the video. This channel talks about the hows and whys of fishing. We cover everything from big game, ultralight, everything in the middle, including fly fishing. And if you are one of those lucky people that live in a part of the world that have big fish swimming in shallow waters and you want to get into slow jigging, this is the video for you guys. Also, there's a bit of a situation when you go offshore, the fish are holding shallower in the water column. Even if, let's say, you're fishing in 1,000 meters of water, there's fish swimming at about 50, 60 meters down. You could use these reels. So it's not really just a singular purpose for shallow water, but it's more on the depth. Okay. Now, before we talk about the reels, let's talk about the why. All right. So first and foremost, as you probably have noticed, Shimano has just released recently several reels that have, or several retrieve speeds on reels. And before, from the slowest going towards the fastest, you have the PG. Okay, then you have the MG. This is new. And then HG. Been there. This is kind of like, this was the standard for slow jigging in deeper water. And then they've introduced the XG. Okay. And this has a lot to do with the water depth that you're fishing in. Now, for the purpose of this video, for fishing, let's say shallow water, we're looking at anywhere between a max of 50 and 100 meters. Okay. Now, what I have with me is for maximum 50, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Retrieve speed is a metric that you should look at when you're buying your reels and match that to the depth that you're fishing in. When you're fishing, say this is your boat, and then this is you right here holding a rod, and then you're dropping down. Okay, bottom's here. This depth, okay, brings about the stretch on your line. On braid, the material itself has 2% stretch. But when it goes through the braiding process, and depending on the company that's doing it and the additives that they add, the coating, that actually increases to about anywhere between, I believe it's 4 to 7%. Sometimes up to 10. It depends from company to company, and even from technology to technology that you're using within the company. All right. Now that's a very important number, and we'll average it out to, let's say, 5%. So if this is your depth and it's at maximum, okay, 50 meters, the stretch on your line at, say, 5% is 2.5 meters. Okay. On a power gear reel, okay, and we're talking about the standard pretty much, which is the OSHA Jigger 2000, and this is a PG. Okay, so you are looking at a retrieve of pretty much 96 centimeters. For our American friends, it is about 37 inches. Okay. Now, on a full spool, it will retrieve 96 centimeters. When you drop it down to 50 meters, all right, the spool will be reduced. All right. So this is your spool. You minus 50 meters, it'll be around there. Okay. So I've computed this. The spool at full, and my line is PE3 on this one. Okay, so PE3 from a full spool, which retrieves 96 centimeters. When I drop it down 50 meters, what happens is that I will have a spool diameter of about 5.6 cm. 5.9 cm. That's when we start on a full spool. All right. When it reaches this level, it is around 4.8. And I did the math on that. Now at 4.8, your retrieve is not going to be 96 centimeters or 37 inches. It's going to be lower. All right. And it is approximately about, from 96, it would drop down to about 87.2 centimeters. And you're going to have to reel about 4 times to get 2.5 meters of stretch and slack off of your line. And that's very important because a lot of people don't really give much thought to this. But at the same time, you know, when you're fishing in situations where there's a lot of structure that you need to deal with, you need a strong reel to pretty much pull the fish off of structure. So a PG is perfect because it has pretty much the right speed and power to pull the fish off of, let's say, rocks, a wreck, you know, and all that debris. So you want a reel that's fast enough to not only pull the jig, give it action, you also want the power of the PG, especially when you're targeting bigger fish. And normally, power gear reels have a higher drag rating, max drag, than their HG counterparts. So it's very important to have the reel, be able to retrieve the line, A, to move the jig, and B, powerful enough to yank the fish out. So this particular reel is pulled with PE3. I've used this before in, 40 meters of water, and actually caught some nice sized fish. Now, you can get away with thicker line, obviously, when you're fishing shallow, and there's no choice, right? You have to have thicker line, with the caveat, of course, that you fish it with the appropriate sized jig. So you need a bit of a heavier jig for this one. And since you're fishing for bigger fish, of course, it follows that you have to kind of match the hatch on the bait that they are biting. So it works out. Now, the problem is when you start using this in depths that are over 50 meters, because of the line retrieval. And remember, that whole 2.5 meter stretch thing, that's actually a percentage. So the deeper you go in the water column, or the deeper you go when you fish, that actually goes up. Now, the problem with manufacturers is that they don't actually tell you how much stretch the line you're using has, because they don't give you that information. You know, it's kind of like a disadvantage. I wish they were open, but there are some companies that just say oh, virtually no stretch, or they only say 2%. But the 2% there is actually the stretch factor of the material, be it Dyneema or Spectra. The stretch of those two is about 2%. And when it goes through the braiding process, again, we get more stretch. I was under the assumption that after the treatment and all this, it would actually have less stretch. But see, the thing is, when you're braiding, right, there's gaps. And it depends on the pitch of the braid. 4-strand braid will have a lot of bumps, whereas 8-strand and more will actually have less bumps because of the angle of the fibers when they braid it. So that's something to keep in mind when you're buying. This is the whole reason why the more carrier is, 8x, 4x, there's 3x, and it goes all the way to like 16. There's some lines that go up to 16 or some absurd number like that, but most of the time you don't need anything more than 8. So carrier is the number of fibers that they use to braid the line. That's straightforward. Now, Shimano has recently released the MG for shallow water jigging, or shallower water jigging. You could use that up to about 100 meters and change. So you could stretch it out maybe to, like, take for example for this one, you stretch it out to 60, sometimes even 70, but you have to keep in mind that you need more revolutions or turns of the reel to actually take off the slack and also move the jig. This is the whole reason why they actually came up with the MG and the XG. So XG is good for extreme depths, but for around 100 meters or to about, I would say 120, you could use the MG, which has, I think it retrieves about 117 centimeters per crank. And that's a big thing because, okay, so that's that's 107. 107 for the MG. Okay, so the MG is 107 centimeters per crank. And that is 42 inches per crank. So it gets more of the line out. The deeper you go, the faster the reel should be, so that you'd be able to take off the slack, and you also take off the stretch. And that's very important because you need to have contact with your jig and feel the strikes. Now, I did mention that you find a bit of versatility when it comes to these, because these two reels are actually also, they double as slow jigging reels for me. Okay, I say double as slow jigging reels because most of the use that these guys see are on my fast jigging rods. Okay, so fast jigging, you need a slower reel and you're constantly retrieving and jigging, so you don't worry too much about the stretch because you're continually taking it off. And yeah, it serves the purpose of both a fast and slow jigging reels. Now, I did mention about depth, right? And when you're out in the ocean fishing for tuna, the water, and then they're holding at 60 meters. You don't have to use an HG, especially on bigger tuna. You don't have to use an HG for that matter, because you could you would be perfectly okay with a PG or an MG. Okay, so a power gear or a mid gear to fish this depth. You have an added benefit, of course, with the power geared reels. They have more drag. They're really stronger in their gearing, so you could pull the fish up more efficiently. And they work for me, of course, with the size of the fish that we get here. And as I mentioned, these are mostly for my fast jigging. If I go after bigger fish than what I expect for the area that I'm fishing in, I could easily just swap these out to heavier line. Okay, so shallow water, big fish, structure, you really want to have a power gear or a mid gear to help you pull them out. Okay, so to recap, today we spoke about the use of slower reels, mid gear and power gear to fish shallower water from 50 to 100 meters, targeting bigger fish. Now, if you're fishing for smaller fish, it might be a good idea to actually downgrade the size of the reel and your line. I have a video of that I made, light jigging with the smaller reels and lighter line, much more fun. But when you encounter, or if you're lucky enough to live in this in a part of the world that has some bigger fish, this is what you should be looking for, and they double as really good fast jigging reels as well. So all you need is really 2 rods if you already have this type of reel, and off you go. All right, so that's it for now. Wanted to keep this short, but there's quite a bit of information, and if you have questions, give me a heads up. As always, I always reply to each and every single comment that I get on the video. If I miss something out, and if you have questions, violent reactions, or whatever, put it in the comment section. I'll get back to you. That's it for now. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Class dismissed.